Hello, I'm the Media Wiz, because one art form wasn't enough, and I'm going to be talking about more bad episodes of Foster's, because 3 episodes just wasn't enough. Last time I talked about 3 of the big ones. I talked about Everyone Knows It's Bendy, Foster's Go to Europe, and my personal least favorite of the bunch, I Only Have Surprise for You. But as the user Context Code, who commented on that video, pointed out, there's a couple of other episodes that seem to be hated amongst the Foster's fandom, and so I'm going to be talking about the 3 that they suggested. So, Context Code, this one's for you. The 3 episodes in question are 2 Season 3 episodes. There's Duchess of Wails and Imposter's Home for Make 'em Up Pals, and the Season 5 episode Ticket to Rod. Usually when I do these kind of videos talking about a variety of episodes from a show, I try to talk about the episodes in the order that they were released. But I think I'm going to start with Ticket to Rod because it's the one that, honestly, I had the least amount of problems with. I still didn't really care for it, but compared to the other 2, it's the least bad, in a manner of speaking. So the episode is about this radio show that has a contest that's giving away 2 tickets to the movie premiere of some movie star in his next big motion picture, the in-universe movie star called Rod Tango, who looks like Vin Diesel with a Mike Tyson face tattoo, and his movies are kind of an amalgamation of all those like Schwarzenegger and Bruce Willis, like basically all those action movies from the 80s that have starred people that were in the Expendables movies. He's one of those. He'd be right at home with those guys. So the plot gets going as Mac and Blue try to get the tickets by getting help from this talking radio friend named Boomer, hilariously enough. And I don't know what it is, but that character was reminding me of that radio-headed kid from Amazing World of Gumball in that episode where like they kind of do a commentary on racism. And that episode's not that good as it is, but I mean, that's beside the point. We're talking about these episodes. So, Blue stays up as long as he can with Boomer to try and get the tickets. He has to step away, and so he tells Frankie to hold his call, because eventually he does hear the chime after they say you have to call in after you hear the chime. So, but Blue has to use the bathroom, so he gets Frankie to hold the call. She answers the question, because Mac gives her the answer, and so then it becomes a question of, oh, well, who's going to go? Because it's only 2 tickets, and Blue wanted the ticket for him and Mac, but then Frankie says that she should get the ticket because she's the one that made the answer, and at that point I was just thinking, oh wow, this episode was done a little bit better a couple years later with the Ticketmaster from MLP. That's the thing with this episode. It's not a terrible plot, it's just that it's been done so many times. And, you know, some shows have handled it better than others. But my issue with it is that it feels like pit stop the episode, because there's just tons of times where they stop and verge off into little tangents, and it kind of makes you wonder where the hell the episode is going. The first half of the episode is just Boomer and Blue waiting to make the call on the radio show, and then after that they say that they have like a whole day before they actually plan like what they're gonna do. And that's when Frankie makes the call, and so then Blue tries buttering up to Frankie by doing nice things for her, like making her breakfast in bed, which he obviously fails at because he's Blue and he's inept. When that doesn't work, he thinks that like if he joins in on them making fun of the movie, then he might get the ticket, because that's the thing. Frankie wants the ticket so that way she can go to the premiere and laugh at how bad his movies are, because she doesn't like Rod Tango, and so and Mac wants to go with Frankie because he has a crush on her. I will admit that's some decent continuity from My Dear Frankie. That was a good episode, but Blue tries making fun of the movies and he sucks at it, which I gotta say, Blue, you'd get kicked the hell off of Mystery Science Theater 3000, because he is terrible at trying to riff this movie that they're watching. So then after that, he finds out that Madame Foster also likes Rod Tango, and so then he decides, oh, well, maybe we can work together to get the tickets away from Frankie and Mac. And then after that, they make up this lie that Madame Foster's gone missing, and then Blue and her try to sneak off, but then they have to go back to get the tickets, and then Frankie and Mac are upset with them, but then Mr. Harriman steps in and says, oh, well, Frankie can't go because she has to work that night. So they're just kind of out of the episode from that point on. And then he takes the tickets saying that Blue and Madame Foster don't deserve them because they were cheating. He puts together his own little contest over the house intercom so that way people can ring in to try and win the tickets fair and square. And Boomer is the one that ends up winning the tickets. And Madame Foster just nixes Blue altogether and just goes with Boomer to the premiere. I mean, considering what she did in season 3 with Foster's Go to Europe, are you really surprised? Oh, and speaking of which, they actually referenced that episode because after that, Blue then starts drinking a bunch of juice boxes because they can't have booze in this show, of course. And then Jackie Cones asks him what he's up to, and then he basically speed runs what just happened all throughout the episode. And then Blue says a line about like, oh yeah, it's just like this time we wanted to go to Europe, but we didn't get to go. And it's like, oh yay, great. Remind people of one of the worst episodes of the show. Great. And after that, it turns out that Jackie Cohen's actually knows Rod Tango personally, and he says that he can get them tickets to the movie, but then it turns out that the movie they go to isn't the right movie, and so then Blue decides he's all pissed off and wants to ruin his premiere, so then he goes to the premiere, he sneaks in through the trash, after trying to barter with Madame Foster and Boomer to sneak him in, and then he ends up in the premiere, but then Rod Tango gets a call from Jackie saying that Blue snuck in, and then Rod Tango picks up Blue and throws him out, and Blue considers it a win because his idol recognized him, and the episode just kind of stops. And that's what I'm saying. Like, it feels like when they were writing this episode, they go, and then, all the time. Like, it seriously feels like that. It's like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and it just feels very scattershot as the episode goes on. It's just like Mac and Frankie are a pretty big part of the first half of the episode, and then they're just gone halfway through. And so it just kind of feels like they were just kind of like trying to think of a way to have it eventually come to some kind of point where it stops. And yeah, I mean, Madame Foster, that's pretty low. I mean, but I'm not surprised considering Foster's Go to Europe. So, and that was just weird, the fact they actually referenced that episode. I was like, I wasn't expecting that. I was like, well, way to reference another terrible episode. I personally wouldn't say this one's as bad, but I definitely see where Context Code was coming from. Because, yeah, it's like, Madame Foster was like, seemed like she was gonna do all of this stuff with Blue, and then, you know, Blue acts like a moron and doesn't win the tickets, and then Boomer gets the tickets, she just bails on him. It's like, wow. Okay, so Duchess of Wails, I'm gonna start with first. And this is interesting to me. Duchess of Wails, Imposter's Home for Make 'em Up Pals, and Foster's Go to Europe were all in the same season, back to back. That was really fascinating to me. I'm like, man, a trio, an unholy trilogy of bad episodes, back to back. You can't make that up. In this episode, they decide that they're finally going to get rid of Duchess because they're sick of all of her shenanigans. And yes, this is a very Duchess-centered episode. So, yeah, let's make an episode dedicated to one of the most hated characters in the series. Like, they even have characters openly acknowledge that she's horrible. So their plan is they're going to try and put Duchess on the market so that way she'll be snatched up and picked up by some family and they can finally be rid of her. Even though in the first episode I thought that her punishment was that they'd keep her at Foster's because of all the stuff that she did with Terrence. But whatever, that they don't want her, so all of a sudden they just put her on the market. They put a bunch of like billboards and advertisements, and a bunch of families come to try and adopt her. She pushes them away because of her repulsive attitude. But this uber nice family, these freaky yuppies with matching sweaters, the next generation of Flanders apparently, they step in and they don't seem to mind Duchess's bad attitude, and they're happy to take her off their hands. And at first this calls for celebration, but then it turns out that they live right next door to Mac's family's apartment. So now Mac is stuck with Duchess, being annoying and constantly whining that can be heard throughout the walls of the apartment complex. And so the next morning, and everyone is just so pissed at what she's bitching about in the next apartment over, Mac's mom says something about how, you know, if this keeps up, they're going to move. And Terrence, being the usual bag of dicks that he is, lies to Mac saying that they're going to move to Singapore. And it's a running gag throughout the episode that everyone keeps saying it's in Wisconsin, even though it's in Malaysia. Yeah, that's a running gag for you. There is one gag where after Mac gets this horrible news, he then goes to Blue to tell him about the situation, and Blue is more than willing to throw away his friendship with Mac as a joke, because Mac and Blue have this back and forth where, you know, it's like, oh, I'm gonna move away and I'll never see you again. Oh my gosh, I'll never be able to, you know, check up on you every day. Oh my gosh, and you'll be up for adoption. Oh my god, well, wait, I mean, like, that doesn't sound that bad. I mean, there's that cute blonde girl down the street. And so that opens up a whole Pandora's box of questions, but that's neither here nor there. So Mac and Blue decide they're going to try and sabotage everything, and so they sneak into the apartment that night, and they make a huge mess. They destroy some of their stuff. They knock over a cake that was sitting on a windowsill. You know, they desecrate a bunch of like family portraits. They cut the little girl's hair into like crazy scraggly pieces. Of course, these people, being freakishly nice, absolutely love it. So it seems like they're not getting rid of Duchess that easily. And then Blue just runs over and ties Duchess up and says they're just going to throw her back in Foster's. And, you know, because of some loophole that's in this, like, you know, this big motto they have, any friend that goes to their door, they have to take in. Even though I'm more than positive there was an episode where Mr. Harriman tried to get rid of Blue just because he took his monocle. Yeah, the continuity in this show could be a little bit iffy sometimes. But anyway, so that's basically the rest of the episode. They try to get Duchess into Foster's, but Terrence, just because he wants to keep up this stupid charade, gets to Foster's first and tells them that Mac and Blue are going to try and get Duchess back. So then what they decide to do is they just mobilize. They get a bunch of blunt objects, more specifically produce, like tomatoes and carrots and such, and just pelt them with them. And there is admittedly one kind of funny reference, just because it's such a reference that Craig McCracken would put in this show. They start pelting them with tomatoes, and Blue goes, "Ah, it's Attack of the Killer Tomatoes!" And as a kid, I never picked up on that, but now that I'm older, I'm like, all right, I get it. I see what you did there. And that's my main issue with the episode. Like a lot of other people, it just takes this weirdly mean-spirited turn. Like, everyone just opens fire on Mac and Blue just because they don't want Duchess back. And it's like, yeah, I get it. They're sick of her. They don't want her back. I get that. But the other thing is, why are they so trusting of Terrence? They know he's a jerk, and he even says that as soon as he shows up. He's like, I know you think I'm a jerk, but it's like they're just so quick to believe him. And it's like, you know, he omits the little thing about, oh yeah, by the way, you know, he told Mac that they're going to be moving to Singapore. And then when everyone realizes that, they go, oh my gosh, we're so sorry, Mac, we didn't know. And it's like, yeah, that's what you get for trusting Terrence. And on top of that, Terrence and Duchess never get a comeuppance for this episode. In fact, if anything, Mac and Blue get punished just because they brought Duchess back. And it's like, because at the end of the episode, Duchess is back and she's still demanding stuff, but now this time, Mac and Blue are the only ones having to take care of her stupid needs. It's like the two characters who have been dealt the most crap in this episode, and you're just gonna, like, poo-poo on them like that? Like, really? And that's some of, like, even more so than Ed, Edd, and Eddy, in my opinion. There are a lot of episodes that end like that. Especially the next episode, we'll get to that in a second. They just dogpile on Mac and Blue, and Duchess and Terrence don't get a single comeuppance. Terrence just books it as soon as they all look at him like, huh? Like, they finally realize, you know, that Mac says they're going to be moving to Singapore. You know, the mom never finds out about that lie and scolds him for what he did. You know, the Foster's gang aren't, you know, they're pissed at him, but they don't really do anything to him. And Duchess, you know, she ends up getting what she wants. In fact, there was one part where she's like, no, I want to go to France instead. It was at that point I'm like, you know what, why don't they just give her what she wants? They put a stamp on her head, mail her to France, and she can be their problem then. But no, you gotta end with Mac and Blue, who have already been dealt a bunch of crap in this episode, you know, having to get the brunt of it. And then we come to an episode that is even worse in that department, with an episode that I should have talked about last time, but I was already talking about enough episodes, so yeah, now we get to talk about Imposter's Home for Make 'em Up Pals. So this one is often described as a Frankie torture porn, and for those who somehow don't know, torture porn is basically a type of episode, usually with cartoons, sometimes other shows, but it's usually applied to stuff like SpongeBob. You got Squidward torture porns. I've talked about a couple of Eddie torture porns from Ed, Edd, and Eddy, stuff like Sorry Wrong Ed, You're Ed Here. Smile for the Ed. In this episode's case, it is a Frankie torture porn because Frankie is nonstop berated and bombarded with crap the entire episode, and it is incredibly painful to watch from beginning to end. The plot is that Frankie is saving up to go to this big concert she wants to go to, but then in comes this new imaginary friend called Goofball John McGee, who just looks like a regular teenage slacker kid who... I am so sorry, Tom Kenny. You're a very talented voice actor, but oh my god, he gives him the most like obnoxious, nasally, high-pitched, fast-talking voice ever. It's like if Ben Shapiro had a slacker son. Frankie thinks that he's just a kid trying to get a free ride. Like, he literally just shows up and says, put a roof over my head and give me food. And then Frankie starts suspecting more and more that he's just a kid because he brings up that he does homework, that he has a sports jersey for school, that he's trying to get a driver's license. He hangs out with other teenagers who, like, they just kind of disappear after, like, one scene. I don't know what their purpose was. But yeah, Frankie thinks that he's just some kid trying to get free stuff. But everyone around her says, oh no, that's an imaginary friend. It's so obvious. It's pretty obvious the twist that they're going to do at the end, that it turns out he actually is an imaginary friend because, you know, for the longest time she thinks that he's just a kid because he looks like a regular person, but he's wearing like wannabe clown clothes and he has a rubber clown nose on. And so she thinks like, oh, well, and she finds a red rubber clown nose at one point in his wash, so then she thinks like, oh, well, I'll just take the nose off. And that doesn't happen until the very end, where it turns out, oh, underneath the red clown nose is actually an elephant's trunk. Yeah, it's like they're building it up. You're like, oh yeah, that's totally where they're going. And yep, they throw a softball and they hit it right out of the park. Ugh. Non-stop, the episode just constantly gives excuses to berate Frankie. Blue is obnoxious to her. Goofball is horrible. He pretty much went the Bendy treatment. I don't think they ever mention him or show him ever again. And granted, yeah, he is a one-off character for a one-off episode essentially, but thank God, because that character sucked. He wasn't funny. He was really annoying. Thank God they never brought Goofball John McGee back. Harriman is constantly finger-waggling at Frankie like he always does, and it's like, it's just really painful to watch, man. It is really obnoxious. It really is like the Bendy episode times 10. Because I didn't like that episode either, but at least it was short. It was only 11 minutes long. This was like a full 22-minute episode, and it drags on so much. They're like, okay, how do we wrap this up as neatly as possible? Because once it's revealed that he actually is an imaginary friend, earlier in the episode they had it that they decided to call the kid that created him up, but they live in Canada. And there's a part where Goofball is on the phone, and they don't show the other person on the other end, but I was just imagining in my head that scene at the end of Sorry Wrong Ed where Johnny is on the phone and talking to someone who we don't see. I would love to imagine that that's who Goofball was calling. Because, hey, Ed, Edd n Eddy was made in Canada, and Johnny, because he says that his creator's name is John Larry McGee, so it was Johnny that created Goofball. I'm going with that. It's no less canon than the rest of the show, because apparently this is the kind of episode that is so bad, a lot of critics and fans of the show alike have pretty much declared this episode non-canon. At least that's what it said on Bad TV Wiki. And then at the very end, oh, the kid and his parents show up and they're Canadian stereotypes. You know, that they're wearing winter jackets and they say "eh" at the end of every sentence. It's like, okay, yeah, of course. Just take Goofball back with you. Oh, and they explain a couple of things. Like, he was trying to get a driver's license so he can drive back to Canada because he wandered off from his family at a circus they went to. Kind of wandering did he do? He went all the way from Canada to America? Okay. Yeah, he's trying to get his driver's license, and they say that he wears a jersey because he's the school mascot, apparently. But why was he trying to do homework? And I'm assuming the teenagers that he invited to hang out at the house were just like people he came across as he traveled across the border, I guess. So yeah, like I said, horribly mean-spirited, horribly unfunny, dragged out. I kept checking the timer. I checked the little timer at the bottom 4 times, and all the times I checked it, I was like, it's not even half done yet. Oh my god. Like, this seriously was up there with the Mac torture porn that was in I Only Have Surprise for You. I was that pissed off watching this episode. I hated this one. This is like neck and neck with that episode, man. I really hated this one. I will give it this. There is one thing I kind of snickered at. One thing, and there's a minor scene where Frankie decides that she's going to dress up as an imaginary friend and see how many people believe it, and of course they do it first. So Goofball points out that, oh, that's Frankie in a costume, and everyone's like, what? And that's when Harriman decides to just keep Frankie working overtime that night, and then they all go to the concert instead of her. It's like, screw you all, screw you people. But yeah, so Frankie decides she's going to dress up as an imaginary friend and see how far she can pull it. So she's wearing like a tutu, fake antennae, and Groucho Marx glasses. And at one point when everyone's gone, she starts talking like Groucho Marx. She's like, ah, yeah, see, I'm gonna convince all of them that I'm an imaginary friend, see, or something to that effect. And it just made me giggle knowing that like Grey Delisle, who does Frankie's voice, had to do that. Something about that kind of made me laugh. It's like, all right, Grey Delisle doing Groucho Marx, that's kind of funny, kind of, but it doesn't make up for the rest of the episode, man. This sucked. This really sucked. So out of the three, I would say Ticket to Rod had an interesting premise, a little bit overdone, but it just kind of dragged on. That was the biggest offense that it had, in my opinion, and Madame Foster was pretty bad in that one. Duchess of Wails, horribly mean-spirited, especially in the third act. It's just, oh my god. And like the two main characters are just dog-piled on by everybody, and it's not fair. And this one is just the most mean-spirited of them all. It really is like, I only have surprise for you levels of suck. It's just, it was unpleasant. It was, I did not get any enjoyment out of this episode. I do not recommend them. And I know there's a couple of other episodes that maybe at some point I'll look at. Like a couple of other episodes I saw were on the Bad TV Wiki. Maybe I'll look at them, but as of now, I think I've covered most of the big episodes of Foster's that people hate. So hopefully that should do it for a while. I do want to eventually do more episodes of other shows. Like I do eventually want to do a video talking about bad Powerpuff Girls episodes, because, I mean, Powerpuff Girls went for the same amount of time. It's just that the last two seasons didn't have McCracken at the wheel. Yeah, I'd be up for doing a bad episodes of Powerpuff Girls review sometime in the future. I just need to like map out what exactly I'm going to do. And if you have suggestions, feel free to comment below. But I'm not going to do it next time, man. I can't. Next time it's something different. It's going to be another game review. Another crappy tie-in game, except it's not GameCube this time. It's the Wii, of course. Just have to wait and see what that one's for. And that was another requested review. So when I eventually get to that one, shout out to whoever requested it. I'll be sure to shout them out in the video. Anyways, guys, until then, I'm the Media Wiz, because One Art Forum wasn't enough, and yeah, screw you, goofball John McGee.